So there'll be an intro too. Yeah. So Angie, thank you so much for hopping on. So listen, there's numerous reasons that the world is small and we have come together. So the first is we both were at Microsoft. So can't wait to hear about that. The second is I'm kind of your neighbor. I'm over here in Savannah, and so you could throw a rock at me. Yeah, exactly. And then the third is you represent probably one of the most exciting things about the freelance economy today, which is 10 years ago we were this tiny little blip that if you talked about, you usually were talking about cheap outsourcing to a developing country. And nowadays it's more about it's a more efficient way for both the talent and the companies to engage the talent. And so when looking at your background, I mean, like I said in the intro, we're going to talk about it, but it is phenomenal. And the fact that you're even caring about the freelance economy just makes me so happy, especially us, those that have been in this forever. So first off, thank you so much for hopping on. Do you want to say where you are since I gave a little hint that you're my neighbor?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this conversation. I am in Charleston, South Carolina. I moved here about a year and a half ago as part of the great pandemic migration, and just really enjoying Southern life.
I love it. Where'd you grow up? Did you grow up near here or?
I grew up in New Orleans, so I have Southern roots, but I moved to Seattle when I graduated college, actually during college. I did an internship at Microsoft my senior year and lived on the West Coast for the majority of my adult life. And so was in the Bay Area for many, many years before moving to Charleston. So it's been a pretty big change, but a welcome one.
So that was the fourth thing I forgot to leave out. So our dog is from New Orleans, and so we call him Little Swamp Boy because every time he finds a bush, he has to roll up in it and act like he's back in the bayou. So that was the fourth thing. I forgot to leave that out because I saw the LSU. But similar to Microsoft. So where did you live in Seattle? Did you pull the young person Cap Hill route, or did you go old person Bellevue, or what'd you do?
So the first year and a half or 2 years I was there, I was in Lower Queen Anne. The stadium, and then I moved to Capitol Hill and lived up on the hill with like a beautiful view of the Sound and Space Needle and everything. It's such a beautiful place to live.
It is. Do you miss the rain?
Yeah.
And what was it?
Colors. I mean, and similar to Charleston, because Charleston gets a lot of rain too, a lot more rain than the Bay Area. And one thing I love about Seattle and I also love about Charleston is that the rain brings just so much vibrancy from nature, just colors, animals, birds. And so I do always, in my nostalgic memories of Seattle, when I, of course, don't remember the 11 months of the year, I think about the beautiful colors and the leaves of Mount Rainier. It's just breathtaking.
And yes, I definitely agree with that. And it's funny, you went as there's Seattle to SF. I did the opposite. So what did it feel like when you went from Seattle to SF?
I was really young. So I moved to San Francisco when I was almost 26. And it was it was to go to business school. So it wasn't just like unprompted. So I actually moved from downtown Seattle to Palo Alto. So I moved from like city to suburb. But it was within this experience of going to business school. And looking back, I think, the reverse order makes a ton of sense because Seattle at that time didn't have a vibrant young professional community. There weren't these massive, Amazon was still pretty small. Microsoft was still pretty centered in the East Bay. And so you lived like a little bit like a more muted lifestyle. It didn't have that like vibrant SF New York young professional energy. So I was pretty excited when I got to the Bay Area just to kind of have more stuff to do. But I loved my time in Seattle. I think that sense of like the smallness of it meant your friendships were deeper and you spent more time doing interesting things. Every weekend doing some athletic outdoorsy endeavor I had never done before, having grown up in the South, like going to REI for the first time, learning, buying crampons and fleece and, Gore-Tex and like all of those words were not even in my vocabulary. So it was a very like eye-opening, just really enjoyable experience.
I know the exact REI you're talking about. You should see the bike path they have now going around the store on the outside. It's pretty cool. Yeah. But and so listen, so so talking about Ruby, the company that you started, and I'm just going to read out sort of, what Ruby is for our listeners. And it's, the way you put it is that you're envisioning a world where you can enjoy the perks of being your own boss and have financial security. So hell yes to that. Now, I want to pull back, right? And the roles that you've been at, beyond impressive. And I kind of just want to hear, how would you describe your career? And then with also the lens of, why the hell did you get into the freelance economy? You could be doing so many other things and have such a more stable, consistent path, right? We both could have stayed at Microsoft and had a very, very cushy, stable life, right? But you decided to do this crazy thing. So yeah, I can't wait to hear more about you.
Totally. And I love this question. In some ways, this was always what I was meant to be doing. And everything that I did leading up to this point led me to this position of starting a company and building a company that makes other people successful as entrepreneurs and supports their desire to build companies and to be financially independent. And so at a very young age, being financially independent was an important goal of mine. I majored in finance, literally for that reason, and started with a very safe career, very lucrative safe career path. Over the course of that time, I kind of ended up in roles at various large tech companies where my job was to take complex things and complex topics and use technology to make them simple. And, over time you learn that, that's called product design. That's called product management. I didn't even know those words at the time. But, I worked in the video games division at Microsoft when I first started. And the first game I built was Link's Golf on the mobile phone. And so it's like, how do you take, this complex interaction that you may have used on a PC and you can simplify it so that, two men on, smartphones on both sides of the country can have a fun experience leveraging technology. So I think that there's this thread throughout my career of taking complex topics, whether it's video gaming or money, and figuring out how to leverage technology and really good product design to make it more accessible and simple so that people can enjoy their lives more. So that's kind of thread number one. In each of my kind of big co-experiences, and you sort of tease this a little bit, but I worked at Microsoft, I worked at Visa for a little while, I worked at Instagram most recently before starting this company, I worked at Capital One for many years. And each of those things, I was typically chartered to start a new team and build a new 0 to 1 product, which required really understanding an emerging trend, understanding how an emerging technology could amplify that trend, help that trend, and then building something that is accessible to a consumer. So that was kind of like thread line number one. So I always, no matter what I did in my career, I was building new products to help people leverage technology to make their lives better. Through line number two is that in my last, once I started at Capital One, I got exposed to the complex topic of money and emotions. And your emotions around money are so deeply rooted. The way you interact with money is so deeply rooted in the emotions you have about money. And the emotions you have about money is so very much generated by how you were raised and the influences around you, and whether you had a lot of money, or you have a lot of money, and sort of ways your parents talked about money. And so much of what I learned at Capital One was not about banking technology. I learned that. It wasn't about building products. I learned to, but it was really about deeply understanding the interaction between financial success and the sort of emotions and sort of deeply rooted emotional needs behind it. So when I left Capital One and I spent time at Instagram, it was the first time that my customer set were not consumers, but they were small business owners and creators. And this is a time where Instagram was growing just exponentially in the number of professionals that were using Instagram as a platform to launch their business. Instagram was their website. Instagram was their payment platform. Instagram was their marketing tool. It was basically a business of the box. And I got to know just this amazing demographic of online entrepreneurs who overnight were leveraging, their personality, their content, and their entrepreneurial energy to build a business leveraging that platform. And one of the things I observed about that is how bad the tools were that they used. And, my team was responsible for making the Instagram tools better, but just in general, the tools available to these micro entrepreneurs were just atrocious. And, we all know how successful Square and Block have been taking the very complex task of being able to accept credit card and simplifying it to a dongle you plug in your iPhone. There's when you watch these online entrepreneurs, you just saw that they were climbing over barbed wire fence to get things done, and yet were just so passionate about what they were doing and succeeding in many, many cases. And so if I think about those three kind of through lines, I really became passionate about how can I leverage technology to make the lives better of small entrepreneurs. And one of the biggest experiences I had was when I left Instagram, I became a freelancer myself. So I took time off during COVID. I started doing some product consulting. And over the course of 8 or 9 months, I had a few clients. I was making good money. And I had this like moment of like, everything was just going to my personal bank account. I was setting aside money for taxes. We had to go and like get our own healthcare. Her husband was a small business owner, and we had been using my Facebook Meta benefits, and it occurred to me that there's this whole other side of managing a business that had nothing to do with sales and marketing, but it had to do with the actual mechanics of managing a business, right? Paying taxes, getting health insurance, figuring out a retirement plan, keeping track of your revenue. And there were no tools out there that were helping micro business owners figure that out. You could use the bigger tools that were available. You could use Excel if you had employees. You could use QuickBooks if you had an accountant. But if you were just a business of one, you were kind of left to spreadsheets or hiring your uncle's CPA and handle it for you. And so that was really the moment where I realized there's no way I can be alone in this. Like, people struggle with money. And then on top of that, I know that there are just millions and millions of online entrepreneurs, a lot of them women, who are starting businesses overnight, especially during COVID. And there's no tools to help them run their business. So it was just sort of one of those aha, no-brainer moments that there was a huge opportunity here. And if not me, then you.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about freelancing yourself. So you go from, especially, what was good, what was bad, and I hear you mention you had a couple clients. Did you just reach out to your existing network? Did you hop on a platform like a Brain Trust or a TopDal or a Catalent? Let me into your world of freelancing.
Yeah, I didn't know any of those platforms existed until after I started.
Yep.
I spent a lot of my time coaching a bunch of my former colleagues on these types of platforms. How do you get into it? For me, it was very organic. My first experience freelancing was when I was in between Capital One and Visa. I moved back to the Bay Area and I was interviewing for jobs, and I ended up doing a 6-month project for a fintech called NerdWallet, almost as like an interim head of project. And that came out of interviewing. Like, a headhunter reached out to me. They wanted to interview me for this head of product role. It wasn't a good fit. I think that they wanted someone with a different set of experience than I had, but me and the CEO really got on, and I pitched him. I said, hey, look, like, I think I can add a lot to your company. Like, let's come up with a way that I can still come in and do something for you, because I'm not in any hurry to get a full-time job. And so we created a project that I could lead. It was basically one of his pet projects to go explore a new white space. And so he gave me a small team, and I spent the next 6 months working 20 hours a week, helping him build a new product line extension while they continued, the search that they were originally on. And I've actually heard that a lot from people of having conversations about full-time jobs. Either they're not the right fit for the role's not fit for them. And that conversation just sort of organically pivots to, but you still need help right now, right? Let's make a deal happen. And at the time, that was perfect for me because I had an 8 or 9 month old. My daughter was 8 or 9 months at the time. And so it gave me a chance to still work and contribute and gain, moving back from the East Coast, I was excited to gain more startup experience again, while still staying on my path, which was looking for a full-time job. So that was kind of my first dabble in freelance. And so when I left Instagram, I kind of knew that was a possibility. It was available as an option set, but actually going from knowing it's a possibility to having a client is a big leap. And so yeah, I'm happy to go into more of that. I just wanted to kind of pause.
Yeah, no, I love that because it a lot of times when people kind of ask the question of like why freelance and are hesitant and skeptical, I kind of try to pull it back. I'm like, hey, let's just remove the term freelance and let's just say working together. And it's like, does it always make sense to have a full-time contract to work together? Or is there a way that you can help not in a full-time contract, maybe 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, maybe just deliverable based? And there's a great, have you seen Ernie Park's newsletter, Part-Time Tech?
Yeah, that's how you and I
Yeah. Is that how you? Oh, my bad. Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. Okay. My bad. Yes.
and
So you guys are the epitome of where the freelance economy is going, and I love that. And you mentioned that you had your friends asking you, what would you say the next 2 to 5 years looks like in terms of people like you? Do you have a bunch of people reaching out to you saying, "Hey, I want to freelance," or
so many,
yeah,
so
yeah,
many.
that's what.
I mean, the thesis that I had, and there hasn't been a study at this level of granularity to back it up, but the thesis that I have is that there are a ton of people of both genders, but I will just like go out on a limb and say women who are mid to late career, who are incredibly talented, but are just kind of looking to shake it up. And when I talk to them, and you're starting to see this in this emerging kind of fractional leadership role, and I think that makes it sound more official than it is. Fractional CMO, fractional CTO, and so I usually market that to my friends because it makes it sound like it's actually a thing. Because the idea of like launching your own consultancy, launching your own practice sounds very scary, but the conversation is very much like, I'm really good at doing these three things, but my career path is taking me to the place where I'm spending 20% of my time doing these three things and 80% of the time doing stuff that I don't enjoy doing. And I'm like burnt out. I don't have enough time to spend with my family, my friends. I'm not in the part of my career where I'm gunning for the next promotion. I'm not in the planting the seeds mode. I'm in the harvesting mode. And there has to be a different model than the model I see of the executives that are on the next two rungs up. And so, I have incredibly close girlfriends that are very senior at Genentech and Google and Microsoft, and like insert the name of company industry. And I think collectively the conversation is like, is there no other path for me to get highly compensated for the knowledge and the expertise that I have? And the answer is yes, there isn't. It's not very well defined. It's not as the comp plan sort of rubric, the promotion rubric that you get from the stuff that shows you exactly what skill you need to master to get promoted from L5 to L6. That doesn't exist when you want to start a freelance or you want to become a fractional executive. And so I think that's very intimidating. And so I spend a lot of time just like coaching people to take the leap, to giving them early steps to take. And we talk about some of those early steps, but a lot of it's mindset. And there already is, but there's a burgeoning interest of just like coaching and mindset training and for how to launch your freelance career and how to launch a business. And, ultimately what I'm doing at Ruby Money is not that different than what somebody who decides to like bail on a corporate job and say they want to start a fractional, marketing executive business. You still have to go through the same mentality of like, I'm launching my own business and the future is unpredictable. I'm not going to have a boss. Like I have to set my own budget. I have to set my rate. I have to open a bank account. Like all of those things exist. And I think that that's really hard mentally for people to face. And that's why I think the tools that we're all talking about building are so important, because it just makes it abstracts the complexity, markets it in a way that is like, oh, this is made for me. I'm supposed to do this. I'm not hacking together 8 systems. Like this is literally a path I'm supposed to go on. And I think we've seen companies do that in tons of industries, but this one I think is going to be the one that's going to change how our generation thinks about this idea that your income can be decoupled from large institutions, and you can work flexibly how much you want, with who you want, when you want. And sometimes that might be 60 hours a week, and sometimes that might be 10 hours a week. And just giving people more examples of that and more tools that show that it's not just possible but normal and expected, I think it's gonna I mean, you talk about this a lot in the podcast. Like, this is the revolution, you know?
Yeah. And I wonder, as you build Ruby, are you going to build it with freelancers, or what are you thinking? Yeah.
Such a question.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like how many. So an investor that I talked to one time, that they said, you need to be careful of, like, how many things are you? What's your innovation hypothesis? Are you going to innovate in terms of the product or the you're working on? Are you going to innovate in sort of how you build a business? And you have to be careful that you don't innovate on too many levers at once. But I have, from the beginning, been committed to building this company in a way that allows people to be entrepreneurs as their company. And so we have hired some people as W-2 employees, and actually we don't have any right now. And I'd like to continue building the company with a part-time freelance workforce as much as I can and for as long as I can. And that doesn't mean, farming out project-based work, to overseas and not giving people equity. That can still mean very meaningful careers, but done in a way that allows our team to enjoy the advantages of the product that we're building. And that was really key to me building the product. Like, I'm not full-time on this, and I want to enable, other people on the team to pursue other passions and interests they have. And so I don't have a huge handbook for exactly what that looks like, but that's a very key part of what I want to build in the company, is this ability to work globally, the ability to hire the best people at the best time for the best skill set, and release some of those constraints around, it has to be full-time, or it has to be, a certain cost structure. Allow that to kind of naturally evolve based on the talent's needs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's one of the most interesting things I think is going to be, we're now at that sort of second round where we've had people who freelance but are in leadership positions going and saying, well, why would I go unlock 15 internal headcounts when I can just instead take the same amount of budget and have 30 freelancers or 60 freelancers? So yeah, it's an exciting time for
playing that headcount game, and I haven't applied like Instagram or Facebook or Microsoft since what's exploded. The whole freelance revolution has exploded over the last 18 years. But I mean, when I was at Visa, the CEO of Visa at the time did a top-down mandate that said no one in the company was allowed to hire consultants because he didn't have visibility into that. He could only hire a full-time employee. My guess is that's not the case anymore, but I also remember, being at Capital One and Instagram, and when you go to play that headcount game, right? You're, the annual process, and I need to get 5 headcount, and this manager allocates 4. You're not given the budget. You're given the numbers, right? The numbers for butts and seats. And this, what the freelance economy is unlocking is, to me, I think, just much better stewardship. It gives leaders a better way to say, no, this is the work I want to get done. This is, the budget I have to get done. Let me go find the best talent. And that might not always be, full-time people.
Yeah. So what we're seeing, and I'm so excited about this. So we're seeing, and there's a pattern where it's easier when this does happen. Large company acquires a company, and when resourcing that new company within the large company, typically the acquired company is very worried about, oh no, we're going to turn into whatever the parent company is. And so we've actually been seeing fractional executive roles for these new companies, and their mindset is, we don't want to take the risk of having someone on the books after 6 months and we can't get rid of them. We would much rather start on a fractional basis from 1 to 3 months. And if it goes that way, then have them be full-time. That was never a conversation even 6 months ago. And we're talking 300K plus type roles, right? We're not talking the cheap developers or the cheap content writers. So it's really, really exciting. And so when you're building out, how would you describe freelancers, solopreneurs? Because when looking at the Ruby site, we see solopreneurs, freelancers, and creators, right? How do we separate? Are they all the same? Do we need to have different terms? How are we going to define this space?
Yeah, they all, the way that I write them, they all make the same thing. I just put an assortment out there so that people can resonate with the word that they enjoy. I mean, it's like, do you want to be called an independent worker, a freelancer, a creator, a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, right? Ultimately, it's a branding exercise. Like one of these words maybe will win out. I don't know which one. So for me personally, I've seen there seems to be like the camp that's really hardcore freelance camp. And then there's a group that seems to not want to be associated with the word freelance because they think that freelance means, not serious or not committed or more giggish, right? Or more like lower paying. And so I've seen solopreneur become a more attractive word in more higher knowledge-based roles, right? More executive type roles, or where the servicing you're offering are not necessarily targeted towards working for companies. So a lot of Ruby Money's members, and just in case we didn't kind of explain this perfectly at the beginning, Ruby Money automates taxes and helps you save for retirement if you are self-employed. A lot of Ruby Money's members, they have multiple income streams. They're a business coach. They sell e-courses. They might even sell physical products. They might also consult for larger companies. And so they have multiple revenue streams. And so they really do feel like freelance doesn't quite sum up the fact that their entire kind of entrepreneurial portfolio. Or if you're a physical therapist or a nutritionist, you don't think of yourself as a freelance. You think of yourself as like a cash-based practitioner. And so I do think it's hard to try to pen all of these people into one word.
So here's my pitch, ready? Because it's been 10 years that we've been mulling these words, and my brain hurts. And so in 2016, we had liquid workforce. I think in 2018, McKinsey came out with something different. We now have on-demand talent was a term that got floated around, sometimes still is. I think everyone agrees the gig economy, that needs to get nuked. That is like the worst term ever. And whenever someone says it, I'm just like, okay, you've never done it before. Because no person in it's going to call themselves a gigger. It just, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But so here's my pitch. I think freelance is good enough. The reason I'm going to say that is not because the individuals want it, but because the clients don't take enough time to care about it and just need a simple word that they can use to unlock the budget or to tell their boss. And when looking at the different terms, on demand it sells a dream that doesn't exist. So we're not Uber, we'll never be Uber, and that's okay. Gig obviously sucks. And things like liquid workforce, elastic talent, all these others get really, really confusing because what are you talking about? And so I think freelance is good enough just because if you say, hey, we're going to have a freelance program or we're bringing in freelancers, it's good. It's good enough. I don't think I could sit at Visa in your positions and definitely not at Microsoft. Did you ever have Math Club, by the way, Angie? Did you ever get stuck in that? Did you ever get stuck in Math Club at Microsoft?
No.
You lucky. Okay. Well, talk about that offline. But I could never.
No, I kind of just agree with you.
Oh, yes, go.
So here's my take. If you're in a B2B, I 100% agree. If you're talking to investors, you're Upwork and you're trying to negotiate a deal with Microsoft, working at HR Tech and you're trying to sell a solution, fine. Use the word freelance all day long. It sounds cooler than consultant. It's the same difference, right?
Yep.
Like not yourself. Sounds cheaper than consultant, right? You say consultant and you think of like office space, and CG. It's like,
freelance teams, Angie. We can have freelance teams. We can have freelance pools.
I honestly agree with you. In a B2B context, freelance is the word. But as a title or label for yourself as the worker, I think it marginalizes a little bit. I think it does similar to what gig economy does.
I like this. Keep going.
Are actually think of themselves more as business owners. They're building a business. They're building a brand for themselves, and part of that might be freelancing for a corporation, but a lot of it might be building a blog, building a selling courses, selling knowledge, participating in knowledge marketplaces, being public speakers. And so to try to call that person, maybe there's like a successful growth marketer. I listened to a couple growth marketing podcasts. There's this one woman, whose name is escaping moment. She is actual growth marketing executive, but she also runs these like amazing report courses, and she probably has a book coming up. And so to say like we should go hire that freelancer for her comes across, I think, as demeaning. So I think that there's still work to be done here. Maybe there can be multiple words, but I do agree with you in the B2B sense. When my customers need right now, right? I'm direct to the individual. I'm targeting, the SMB or the business owner. And so I don't think that speaking to them and using the term freelancer would land as well as entrepreneur, solo creator, even creator resonates really well. There's something that's a little bit more ephemeral, a little bit more comes across as more aspirational than freelancer.
So you know what? Yes, absolutely. I would add to it. So I think what you nailed is under the B2B context, especially with more large companies, the word freelance is helpful, but I would actually add to it. It's helpful to say once, and then once you actually talk about the individual, it's usually the specific skill and then some tag related to years of experience or industry. So when actually talking with the freelancer, usually you say it once to say, hey, do you want a full-time or a freelance resource? Or do you want full-time agency or freelance? If freelance, then it goes, okay, what are you looking to accomplish? And who's the best to get you here? So you never say, here's a freelance designer. You just say, here's a designer. And then you look at the person's experience, meaning industry or years or the things they've produced. So I actually fervently agree with you. I think in my brain, I'm like, okay, what's the easiest term so that they, meaning the people paying, can understand and go? But I fervently agree, especially when you talk about, courses. And I do think there's I think the tough part is if I were to go to a VP of say a VP of product and say, hey, do you want to hire a creator for this? Most likely they're going to say, hell no. I want someone that's going to show up, do the work, exceed my expectations. Yeah, exactly. So I think,
To say that you're enabling the creator economy on your thing. I was like, there's nobody who's making videos for TikTok in my user base, but if that's the word you're really focused on using. They're like, no, creator is just anyone that creates something with their knowledge. Okay. But you know what this reminds me of?
What?
And I don't want to put any of this debate for many people, but this reminds me a little bit of when when big companies were shifting from external software development to internal software development. The prior IT language was you were buying units of code, or you were I just the sort of outsourcing team that you were working with, you would say, give me your requirements and I'll give you a price, and that's all you need. And then when you move to internal or working more directly, and I had this experience at Capital One and Visa where I was working with agencies, and they'd be like, just give us your requirements and we'll give you a price. And I was like, no, I want a team. I want a front-end engineer, I want a back-end engineer who's working on this, UI designer. I want to interview them, I want to meet them, and then I want us to be on Zoom or co-located. And they were like, no, engineers aren't real people. They're just marks on my spreadsheet. You give me budget, I give you code. The rest is we won't talk about it, right? There was something about this conversation where we were, this word of freelance was triggering me because it almost felt this marginalizing the talent skill that we're really talking about,
And I love that you call that out, because the reason I use freelance is to do the opposite, because I actually say white to the eyes, right? That's what we care about. Because like you said, you go to the agency, you say, hey, we want this. They give you a price. You go, where's the team? Who's doing the work? And the reality is you never see who's doing the work. Whereas in freelance models, you know the whites of the eyes, and it's digitally tracked because you have to have that way. Some of the models are really bad, right? Like the large marketplace with ratings and reviews, those are terrible. And we'll, from a data side, we'll get along with how those are just beyond crap. But so let's because we could talk all day long about this, Angie. Let's get into specifically the fact that yesterday or 2 days ago was tax day, and a lot of people were hurting. Where do we stand in terms of actually helping freelancers? Where do we need to get to? And I will tell you, it was a painful day 2 days ago. But yes, open to you on what the hell's going on with independents / freelancers, and you can just do the full financials if you want, but taxes in general, ouch.
I mean, it's like what the two things that are certain in life, death, and taxes. And for most Americans, their taxes are abstracted from them by their employer. Right? They walk into their HR office, they're given a form. The form, by the way, is super confusing. Like, there are how many exemptions? Like, I don't know. Like, add exemption. Like, I don't know how to answer this question. You somehow muddle the form, and then you really don't have to think about taxes again until you're logging into TurboTax in March. And if you're young and single and you just have a very simple W-2 income, it's usually a non-event, right? I used to enjoy it. Like, I'm that nerd that really enjoyed doing tax. One fast forward, and if you have done any kind of freelance work or any other separate income from an Airbnb or course online, you're a trader, and no longer that no longer applies, right? You now have a whole different set of rules, labeled your terms they use to describe you: sole proprietor, S corp, this, right? You have these interesting deductions that TikTok is telling you that you should take. A lot of different things. You have these things called 1099s, 1091s, Schedule Cs, like just the vocabulary, and there isn't any HR or accounting department to abstract that away from you. It's just all coming at you. And so you're left to figure it out. And so what we have noticed is that leads to really two ways that this takes place. One is that people just do nothing. They put their head in the sand. And they wake up at the beginning of April, and they finally go into an H&R Block office, or they open up TurboTax, or they hire a CPA, and they get a massive surprise tax bill. And even if you only make $75,000 as a solopreneur, and that is a lot of money in a small town, but it's definitely much money if you live in New York or LA, you're going to have a $20,000 to $30,000 tax bill. And there's just like no way you could have planned for that if no one told you ahead of time that was going to happen. And so almost all of, I would say 50 to 75% of our customers have had that experience in the past, where they've just been slammed with a surprise tax bill. And it just throws off your entire life and your entire business plan. Yes, there are installment plans, but ultimately you spent money that wasn't yours. And the way that the government treats self-employed people is, we want to get paid as you get paid. We only ask you to file once a year, but we expect you to pay us all the time, right? And specifically 4 times a year. And if you don't make those payments, not only do you still owe us the money, but we're now charging you interest on what you should have paid us. And it's not something that anyone tells you about. And it's definitely not something that usually a company tells you about when they hire you. In fact, there's a lot of legal reasons where companies and hiring managers and HR departments are not allowed to give you any guidance about your personal tax situation. And so you really are left to the Google. The other thing that people are doing is they're hiring very expensive CPAs and bookkeepers. And there's a little cottage industry of firms, some of them digitally enabled, some of them not, that are marketing towards freelancers and creators. And they're really expensive. But people are, I don't have the energy to handle this, and I'm scared of the IRS, and I don't know what I don't know, so I'm just going to outsource this whole thing. And so those folks tend to do well, right? They get the deductions, they pay the taxes on time, but it doesn't mean that they are good at budgeting. And so they're still a lot of times waiting until the end of the year to find out how much they owe, because most bookkeepers and CPAs don't have access to real-time tax models. And so two of the things that Ruby Money is solving is giving you that education throughout the year on what you owe in taxes every time you get paid. So in a way, it's like replicating that paycheck experience. your employer tells you that they're going to pay you $6,000, somehow only $4,000 ends up in your bank account, and you just learn to live your life on $4,000. That's sort of what Moving Money does. It's like, okay, sure, your client paid you $1,000, but I know all these things about you, so I know that your tax rate's going to be about 28%. So 280 of that 1,000, it's not your money. And so you should just like set it aside now, move it into a different account, and then make sure you make those estimated payments every quarter. And so we're creating this kind of set it and forget it habit and mentality to save people from ever having that surprise tax moment. The other thing I think that we're seeing a lot of is this concept of profitability as a freelancer. Like, what is my rate and how much of my rate am I actually going to keep? And if you don't if you are a high earning knowledge worker freelancer, taxes are your number one expense. It's usually, there's nothing else. Like there's no expensive laptop you can buy that can top, your taxes. And so taxes now become a key part of your business strategy. Figuring out how to lower your profits, how to invest in tax deferred retirement plans, how to take advantage of deductions, how to defer receivables or payables, and really implement a tax strategy that allows you to preserve as much of your profit as possible as a business owner, because that's how the IRS is treating you. And so developing the language and the tools to highlight that knowledge and make smart suggestions. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of freelance platforms build it into their platform. But that's like 100% our sole focus is really to eliminate the need to hire the very expensive CPA bookkeeper and eliminate the opportunity of you ever waking up and having $30,000 from the IRS.
That it was a rough day 2 days ago. Yes. And even if you have an accountant, it can still be rough. I think what most excites me is the angle of proactive planning. And it's one of those things. I wonder, do you think, as we have for 9 minutes coming up, but how do you think people do you think they're going to stay freelancing or stay as a solopreneur, or do you think they're going to navigate in between, and what are the implications of that?
Yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but I think you'll have a good group of people who find success entrepreneurial and go from being freelance to being like fully entrepreneurial, like you talked about, where they're selling their content and then they create a team underneath them and whatnot. I think the path where people shift back and forth, I think I saw like 80% of Gen Z is expected to polywork, which means have income from multiple sources. So even if they do have a W-2 job and that's their primary 30-hour a week or 40-hour a week, I still anticipate the majority of up-and-coming professionals to have some sort of incremental source of income, which means you need to be proactively planning financially around that. And you need to learn the basics of, running your own P&L, right? Like, whether you have an Airbnb or, whatever you're doing on the side, you have to think about pricing. You have to think about expenses. You have to have an invoicing platform. You have to have a credit card taking platform, and then you have to think through, bookkeeping and taxes. And so, if you believe those stats, then 80% of Gen Z is going to need a tool that doesn't exist. And so I think that unless you see some massive changes in banking law and tax law, I think that these new tools are going to have to obscure that complexity away to enable the desire of this new generation of entrepreneurs have.
And why do you think actually our generation didn't do it, right? Like why the 35 plus, why haven't they always had a side gig?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what you think about this. I mean, I think that Uber and Airbnb and Turo and these sort of like shared economy platforms didn't exist. And so your options were more like traditional brick and, even launching a Shopify store, selling something on Etsy was way harder, 10 or 15 years ago. So I think there's just been an explosion of enabling technology that gives you the ability to launch a business overnight with a click of a button. I mean, I think we saw the guy on LinkedIn who launched his t-shirt shop using Chat GPT, right? Like,
yep, exactly. So Yeah.
explosion of enabling technology, and I think there's something to do with the what's happened in the economy over the last couple of decades and the amount of economic insecurity the younger generations have had, in the loss of trust in big institutions. It was still really cool when we were coming up to like work at a big name brand company and be there for like a decade. And now it's like the cool thing is to work for a company no one's ever heard of, right? It's not like as cool anymore. And so I think those three trends have kind of really come together to create this explosion. Like you can't trust the institutions anymore. So you need to be in charge of your own. The big banks fail, companies are laying you off. There's an explosion in tools that enable you to start your own business overnight. And I mean, I think those are the two, right? That we summed up. Like, so yeah. I mean, I'm jealous. Like, I want to go back.
I know. I'm jealous because 10 years ago, when I said I was freelancing, I got dumped and was told I could never support someone. So, nowadays, like you said, now it's cool. I think I'll use little Silicon Valley terms. So when raising, right, you always want to say that this is a massive disruption because there's been a technological, economic, and societal change. And I'm going to use the Uber analogy because I think part of this is that Uber had the technology and economic change, but societally, I think it did the opposite, where it made a side gig seem like a bad thing, right? Because, oh, did you hear so-and-so's partner is driving for Uber? Ooh, they must not be doing well, right? Like that was unfortunately the view of it. And so now what we're heading into is, okay, the technology's been there, honestly, for 10 plus years to be able to have a digital business, to be able to operate in a remote manner seamlessly. Economically, I know, we make way more money when we're doing it this way than when we were in corporate. And yes, we had a little more stability or perceived stability, but boy, do I make more as a freelancer than when I was, sitting at Microsoft. Now, socially, I think this is where we've seen the explosion in, honestly, the past 6 months. And so I think that's the thing. I think Uber did the opposite, where it said, ooh, so-and-so, like side gig, sharing economy, gig economy, ugh, like don't do that, which is unfortunate because Uber drivers that are the shit, right? Usually they're these incredibly gracious, hard work. Like, so that's kind of my view on it.
I think you're true because I went to business school at Stanford and I worked at big top tier companies, and I remember when I had that gig at NerdWallet when I was a part-time consultant there, and I saw the future where I could do that.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling the societal hangover of like that's not a real career. Like,
remember that?
The mom, and I know a lot of women who quit corporate jobs and built successful businesses on Amazon, like selling things on Amazon, doing drop shipping or launching blogs, and they make good money, but they feel they felt inferior.
Yes.
When talking about what they're doing around all of our classmates who had these big jobs at Google or Goldman Sachs, and I think that has changed. I think now when I talk about what I'm doing, when we talk about people who are fractional execs or freelancing, like that's viewed as the hip cool thing. And the people who are like sticking it out, hoping the next round of layoffs doesn't get them, you're looking at those people going like, are you kind of boring? Like, are you not willing to take this? You're not believing yourself? Like, why are you still there? And like, Randy's an example of that. Like, he is a super talented, very senior engineer that did a very lucrative job at a big company. And yet he's like hustling to build his community, he's hanging around with entrepreneurial ideas, he's passionate. And, that's not someone who couldn't get it. That's not someone who needs extra money on the side. That's someone who's proactively choosing to pursue their career in a more differentiated and meaningful way. And I think that's the societal change that just makes this a super exciting time to be here. So I applaud you for having been here along the whole journey. Like, I just jump in now and it's cool and it's fun.
No, we need you. Don't leave. No. So, okay, we got Rocket Round. We got a couple questions, less than 17 seconds to answer. And first one is favorite restaurant in Charleston.
Ooh, good one. I'm going to go with, it's called Chez Nous. It's a little tiny French restaurant.
Oh my God, yes. And by the way, I'm just using this to bring my partner there. So I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
including like the 2 or 3 famous restaurants that you'll see on every like food and wine blog.
So okay, we got favorite restaurant. What about a favorite coffee shop in Charleston?
Oh, Charleston needs some help on the coffee shop front, but I really enjoy Second. I think it's called Second State or
Are
Seventh
you
Street Coffee.
comparing it to Seattle?
Well, or just anywhere in the Bay. I mean, I was a huge Phil's fan. So it's like,
I love Phil's. Jacob's
or,
Wonder Bar was so good.
I mean, there was a blue bottle in the lobby of the office I worked at Instagram. Talk about bougie perks. They're just like
So
walk
bougie.
in off the shuttle and get my blue bottle coffee. So yeah, I can't really endorse any coffee shops in Charleston quite yet.
Okay. Can we just talk about how, like, okay, it seems cool, but how inefficient it is that Google would have a shuttle, bring people to a campus that was mocked as a university with free lunches, free dinners, free everything. Like, talk about unsustainable. Meanwhile, it was the same people that was like, we're all about sustainability, yet you're like, hey, your work style, that ain't sustainable. But I digress. That's for another day. Favorite current.
I have PTSD about my 2-hour shuttle ride down to Midland Park.
Don't get me started. Favorite show you're currently watching?
Shrinking.
Shrinking. What is Shrinking? Is it on Netflix?
So good. It's Harrison Ford, who like seeing him and is amazing. And why the author, I'm so bad with actors' names, but he was on How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, I was just about to say that. Oh, I was confusing it with The Big Bang.
I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's so good. It's really, really good. It's on, I believe it's on, I think it's on HBO.
We'll look it up. Okay, favorite
Jason Segel.
Jason Segel.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And Jessica Williams is hilarious in it. You'll love it. So far, it's better. Like everyone loves it. Like old, young, they all love it. It's got something for everybody.
Perfect. Okay, you got 2 more. Favorite book?
Okay, this is an easy one. One of my classmates and good friends published a book recently called Soul Solution, and it's about following your energetic breadcrumbs to decide what you're really meant to do and how to really tap into who you are. And it's designed for people like you and I who have always followed, the proper path in life. And you get to the top of the mountain, you realize the view is as
I love it.
Great.
I love it. Okay, last question. Favorite animal and why?
Oh, favorite animal. I'm a cat person. I grew up with cats. We had a ton of cats growing up. They were all outdoor cats, so their lifespans vary. But I just love everything about cats. I love how persnickety and precocious they are. I love how they get to choose like when to love on you and not, and they don't. They're very.
That is so awesome. I love it. Angie, thank you so much for hopping on. And where can our listeners find you?
So come check out Ruby Money, rubymoney.us. The app right now is only on iOS, so if you're an Apple fan, download it. You stay on top for taxes, and then we're also on Instagram at rubymoney.us, and then I'm on LinkedIn, Angie Woody.
Perfect, Angie. Thank you so much.
Of course. I appreciate you having me on, and this was a fun conversation. I look forward to staying in touch.